In my past life, my parents divorced, my sister went with our wealthy mother, while I stayed with our bankrupt father. No, Lilith will only suffer if she stays with you. I have to take her. Who could have guessed? Mom remarried an abusive man, and her life went from bad to worse. Dad, after much soul-searching, started a successful business. You've been homely and unlikable since you were a child. Now that we're going to live with your Sterling, don't you dare embarrass me. Consumed by jealousy, my sister stabbed a knife into my abdomen. Sterling, I want to go abroad. When I opened my eyes again, we had both been sent back to the day our parents had just gotten their divorce papers from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Lilith's here. This time, my little sister spoke up first. I love Daddy. I want to go with Daddy. Lilith, is that my precious daughter Lilith? My heart soared with joy. I had no desire to go back to a life of hiding and running. Miles. How dare you criticize me? If it weren't for your infertility, would I have had to resort to this? 1. I was completely focused on preparing for the college entrance exams. Sterling was extremely busy during this period and was almost never home. My sister hugged our father's arm and said coquettishly, Brother Joe was the delinquent boyfriend Lilith was dating. Dad, please let me come with you. I love you the most. And I'm not afraid of any hardship at all. Lilith, just give her a scare. That's enough, she is your own sister. After all, hearing such words from his sister, who had grown up willful and spoiled, moved their father deeply. Sterling, who hadn't been seen in a while, showed up that evening, with my mother dressed to the nines by his side. He completely failed to notice their mother standing nearby, her face dark with displeasure. Seeing me in this state, Sterling expressed some concern. My mother started saying things to put me down, but Sterling cut her off. Sterling looked utterly incredulous. He couldn't fathom that someone could be so vile, to have their own sister kidnapped and beaten to such a state. Mom stepped forward to intervene. How does this prove it was our Lilith? Ting, you have no shame. I admit I've been a bit neglectful of you lately, but you didn't have to set up your own sister like this. If my sister goes with Dad, she'll have a hard life. Does that mean I don't matter? Lilith, do you know this person? My parents were fiercely fighting over custody of my sister, as if I were just thin air, completely invisible. Sterling was by my side, offering comfort. In the end, there was no changing her mind. My sister was dead set on going with Dad. Our Lilith is always the sweetest and most sensible one. Mom only chose me as a last resort, when Mom and Sterling went back to rest. My little sister woke up as if nothing had happened. I followed Mom and got into my stepfather's luxury car. Sterling's company was insolvent, and none of the projects in the pipeline were generating the substantial cash flow needed to close deals. My little sister skipped away, holding Dad's hand. Mom insisted that Sterling declare bankruptcy, but the company was his life's work. Before leaving, she shot me a challenging look. In the end, Sterling made the decision to liquidate everything, selling the house and car, and leveraging whatever assets he could, to pour all the funds into covering the company's financial shortfall. I don't really care. Mom was never around either, practically never home. She grew increasingly resentful of Sterling and ended up leaving me behind as well. After all, Mom is quite wealthy now, while Dad's situation is a complete mess. I discussed with Sterling the idea of taking a leave of absence from school to help him out, too. I started working at Sterling's company, in my past life. To avoid the debt collectors, Dad dragged me around, hiding from place to place every day. Sterling has gone abroad on a business trip, and he's left the company in the hands of me and his nephew, Miles. I simply couldn't focus on my studies at all. Miles is older than me, but having lived 2 lives, I tend to handle many situations more adeptly. The failure of his career and his mother's departure were devastating blows to him. One evening, just as Miles and I got home, we saw a luxury car parked at the entrance. He completely gave up on himself, drowning his sorrows in cheap liquor in his rented room, neglecting everything. I glanced at Miles, who was standing beside me. At school, I was a top student, but I couldn't afford the tuition and had to take care of him, forcing me to drop out early to make a living. In her past life, she was completely absorbed in a life of pleasure and never paid attention to anything else, so naturally, she wasn't familiar with Miles either, even though we came from the same womb. My younger sister has always been luckier than me. Didn't you hear Lilith talking to you? She's pretty and knows how to win our parents over, so they both adore her. Miles usually seemed frail and delicate, but when it really mattered, he came through. On top of that, because she's younger, they always say that as the older sister, I should act like it and let her have her way in everything. Lilith, furious that this man would stand up for me, hadn't expected it. She stepped forward, ready to slap me again. Even when they got divorced, both of our parents wanted only her. Without a backward glance, I pulled Miles into the house, but in this life, she ultimately chose Dad, giving him a moment of sweet victory in front of Mom. Sterling is back from abroad, and he's wrapped up the business over there. As soon as we got in the car, Mom started in on me, back home. Miles and I managed to stabilize the situation as well. That evening, Sterling came to see me. Ting ting, I'm back. Miles is handling things at the company. How absurd. What kind of mother says that about her own daughter in front of other people? I hope you'll focus on your studies for now. If you want to study abroad, Sterling can arrange that for you. But it didn't matter. The car had entered the villa district where the wealthy lived. I was really touched that Sterling remembered my wish to study overseas. I knew my stepfather from my past life was rich, but I never imagined he was this wealthy. Sterling, the company is going through a tough time, and the family doesn't have the funds to send me abroad. I'd rather continue university here at home. After I graduate, I can stay by your side and help you. My stepfather arranged for me to attend the best private school in the city. Sterling didn't press the matter, repeatedly assuring me that he had no children of his own and that from then on, I would be his child. There was a dedicated chauffeur to drive me to and from school every day. After Sterling fell on hard times, my mother vanished without a trace, taking every valuable item from the house with her. To make up for the regret of dropping out in my past life, I studied extremely hard. Sterling booked a banquet for me at the city's finest hotel to celebrate my college acceptance. I made my family proud, consistently ranking in the top 3 at school every year. Miles had seen enough. He stepped in front of me and confronted her. My mother, who used to be rather indifferent towards me, became very willing to attend parent-teacher meetings for me. Sterling couldn't stand by and watch, so he spoke up in my defense right then and there. When she went, she was the envy of the other parents and was praised by the teacher as an outstanding parent. That's right. Ever since I moved to the Chi household with my mother, I've always called him Sterling. Since my stepfather didn't have any children of his own, I was actually quite comfortable in this household. When I started university, I continued to help out at Sterling's company. Since I was so used to calling him Sterling, he didn't mind at all and told me there was no need to change. This time, Miles and I came to a private resort villa. You're just a kid. What's all this talk about going abroad? Don't get a big head just because your grades are decent. We had a very pleasant conversation the entire afternoon. Before my stepfather could even say a word, my biological mother was already beside herself with anxiety. In my past life, it was by hitching a ride on Boss Joe's coattails that my father and I managed to turn our fortunes around completely. It was only later that I realized true hatred for someone needs no reason. Back then, the company was slowly getting back on its feet, but it was still like an empty shell. I desperately tried to help the company gain a firm foothold through every channel I could find, which is how I also met Boss Joe. Even between a mother and her own daughter, he has a great appreciation for my capabilities and feels completely at ease entrusting matters to me. 3. In this life, while my father and sister were still basking in that small joy, I had already gotten in touch with Boss Joe. My stepfather was nothing like how my mother and sister had described him in their past lives: moody, domineering, and full of violence. In such a vast market, whoever gets in first is the winner and takes it all. On the contrary, I think he's quite intelligent, but also arrogant and proud. Looking forward to a successful partnership, the conflict between him and my mother became apparent not long after we arrived. We have reached a cooperation agreement with Mr. Joe. My mother is a complete trophy wife, all looks and no brains. Soon after, all the distributors in the industry were actively seeking us out for partnerships. Our cash flow turned positive, and the company was immediately brought back from the brink. Honestly, you could say she and my father are a match made in heaven. My sister's company's clients immediately switched sides and came to do business with me. My father was a bona fide rich second generation, always a man of simple mind and strong body. In less than 6 months, I had bought back my original villa and luxury cars. It was only through sheer recklessness and his wealth that he managed to marry my mother. The company became the leading local enterprise, and its story was covered in the newspapers. While my grandparents were still alive, they were the ones holding everything together. My sister's situation took a drastic turn for the worse overnight, after they passed away one after the other. My father was led into investments by his so-called friends. The company filed for bankruptcy due to insolvency. He lost everything, his own fortune and all the things his grandparents left him. My father has a gambling problem and used company funds to place bets. My mother immediately lined up her next partner and divorced him. My sister's life revolved around partying, holding down a meaningless job, and financially supporting her deadbeat boyfriend. My plans to study abroad were thwarted by my mother's interference. My father fled town to escape his debt collectors, but with my current grades, I could easily get into a top-tier university here in the country. When my sister could no longer afford to support him, her boyfriend left her too, pregnant and without an education. She was forced to take a job washing dishes in a restaurant. Miles and I were at a restaurant once when I saw her. She was young, with a slight swell to her belly. clearing the tables. Auntie Sue, is my mom home? When she spotted me, she stormed over in a rage, looking like she wanted to hit me. Your mom went shopping, but your sister is upstairs reading. She kept saying, no way, there's just no way it could be like this. I could hear my sister's footsteps heading toward my room. Thankfully, the manager stepped in and stopped her. You opened my door without my permission. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept repeating, it can't be true. Ting Ting, who are you trying to fool? There's no one home. Who are you studying so hard for? With that, she snatched my book away. The restaurant let her go, and I never saw her again. My younger sister is supposed to be under Dad's care, 10, yet, almost every month, she comes to this house to get money from Mom, along with all sorts of jewelry and clothes. My mother, who had been missing for a long time, reappeared after Sterling became successful again, every time I went back. The car was packed to the brim. She was sobbing and apologizing profusely, saying she must have lost her mind and been deceived by someone outside. A month later, she was still wearing the same tattered clothes. By the looks of it, she couldn't make it on her own out there again. All the valuable things were taken by my gambling-addicted father, sold for cash, and squandered. Sterling remained silent this time, his expression deeply conflicted. In this life, my father was not only an alcoholic but also a compulsive gambler, yet he still let her stay. Though she was put up in the guest room, Mom really couldn't bear the thought of my sister living in hardship with Dad. The power dynamics at home have completely flipped. Sterling agrees to whatever I say, while anything Mom suggests gets shot down. She even discussed with my stepdad whether we could bring her over to live with us. At first, she treated me the same as before, scolding me now and then to put me in my place. My stepdad agreed, but to our surprise, Dad refused to let her go. Sterling gave her an ultimatum, either start treating me better or find somewhere else to sleep. After all, he was relying on my sister to get things from Mom to support his own lifestyle. She finally stopped picking on me. All that reading has made you stupid. What's the use of so many books? You're not as pretty as I am, and even Mom and Dad don't like you. But I still felt uneasy all over, with the creeping sensation that she was watching me. This good life you have now, I'm the one who let you have it. Enjoy it while you can. It won't last long. She'd make secretive phone calls behind everyone's back and was constantly slipping out. She rummaged carelessly through my things in my room. Sure enough, I woke up one morning to find myself tied up in an abandoned warehouse. Of course, in a past life, this room was her princess suite. Who else could it have been but her? She rummaged through everything. Lilith, come out. Tisk, TSK, you don't know how to live well. What on earth is all this junk you've bought? My sister's belly was flat. The baby was gone. She had aged terribly, looking like a middle-aged woman. All you do every day is bury your nose in those musty old books. She couldn't even support herself, and under her boyfriend's persuasion, she had the baby aborted. I paid her no mind and let her carry on. He disappears when there's trouble, only to show up again when there's something to gain. Her boyfriend asked with concern, are we really going to get the money? Don't worry, she said. My mom told me that old man she thinks very highly of her now. Getting a bit of money from him is a piece of cake. I watched them coldly, observing their little performance of mother-daughter affection. So it was Mom meddling again. Mom saw that my room had been completely ransacked. No wonder she was so insistent on watching me drink that glass of milk she kindly warmed up for me last night. What good could you possibly find in her room? Come on, let's go to my room. It's full of clothes, jewelry, and accessories I just bought. Take whatever you like. They were in on it from the very beginning, lying in wait for me here. With that, she took her sister by the hand and left. 11. She didn't so much as glance my way the entire time, nor did she offer a single word of concern. In this life or the last, she's always been so biased against me, wishing I were dead. Auntie Sue came upstairs carrying a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. Lilith, I'm your sister, after all. Once in my room, she began tidying up with practiced ease. What kind of lousy sister are you? I've always been prettier and luckier than you. How come you get all the good things in the end? Look what I've become. I've never seen a mother play favorites like this. Don't worry, sis. Just cooperate nicely, and I'll make sure your end is quick. Whatever. Her days are numbered anyway. She wanted to kill me again and start over, but her boyfriend didn't dare. That would mean prison time. We agreed. We get the money and leave. I'm not playing along if it means taking a life, he said, trying to grab the knife from her hand. A fierce argument broke out downstairs, right then. The sound of police sirens pierced the air outside. How shameless can you be? You eat my food, wear my clothes, and you have the nerve to keep a gigolo on the side. You inside, you're surrounded. Let the hostage go. No. A stinging slap landed squarely on my mother's face. I always knew she was the jealous type and wouldn't give up that easily. My younger sister immediately rushed forward to intervene. I had a plan with Miles. The moment they took me away, he was to call the police. My stepfather, in a fit of rage, shoved her to the ground. My mother's sudden, uncharacteristic concern yesterday made me suspicious. I only drank that glass of milk after sending a message to Miles, and I haven't even started on your precious daughter yet. Wasn't it agreed that each of us would take one daughter? The police had the surrounding warehouses completely surrounded, leaving no way out. Why does she keep running over to my house every time she shows up? Half the stuff in the place goes missing. Lilith, just stop, you're really going to end up in jail, her mother retorted defiantly. My daughter is only taking what's mine. It's none of your business, coward. What are you so afraid of? At worst, we just start over. Yours, take a look at yourself, name one thing on you that I didn't pay for, and now I'm expected to support your whole family on top of it. In my past life, at the very birthday banquet I helped organize for my father, I had already become a successful entrepreneur, surrounded by flattery on all sides. I remember when we were kids, the younger sister was the more capable and prettier one, yeah, and now look how the tables have turned. The younger sister's a total mess, gullible, no common sense, getting played by men, while the older sister's the one who made it big. That remark from my mother completely enraged my stepfather. He lost all reason and, in a fit of rage, started throwing my mother's belongings out. My younger sister, dressed in the plainest clothes imaginable, cautiously approached me and said, when she tried to stop him during the outburst, she was shoved to the ground, "Sis, I'm going to embarrass you looking like this. Could you please come with me to the nearby mall to buy a decent outfit?" No one in the house dared to step in and stop him, and my younger sister cowered in the corner, too frightened to move. Her pitiful look right before the birthday banquet made me fall for her little act. Back then, my stepfather married my mother not only because she was beautiful, but also because she came with 2 children. I took her shopping in my brand new convertible. After they married, the way my stepfather raised me felt more like he was grooming a successor, but on the road, she lost her mind, grabbed the steering wheel from me, and steered us straight into a truck. However, in my previous life, my mother took advantage of this very fact to recklessly squander my stepfather's assets. The next time I opened my eyes, we had been reborn. The younger sister is pretty, but there's nothing going on upstairs. The funny thing is, to this day, she still doesn't know I was reborn too. That would be one thing. 12. But this mother-daughter pair is both insatiably greedy and simple-minded. Her boyfriend had wrested the knife from her hand, leaving her seething with resentment. Not to mention the mother's extramarital affairs, the sister has the gall to boast that everything their stepfather owns will one day be hers. She then pulled a pistol from her pocket. Word of this quickly reached the stepfather's ears. "You're not leaving here alive today. I'm not even dead yet, and you're already eyeing my estate. Anyone would be upset by that." As she spoke, she aimed the gun at her boyfriend. After all, he's not my own flesh and blood. There's just no way to feel close to him. Try to take it again, and I'll kill you too. The stepfather had no choice but to bring in his own nephew, groom him as the successor, and drive the mother and daughter out of the house. Her boyfriend seemed to be intimidated and didn't advance any further. In this life, Mom was still driven out. "Listen up in there, this is your final warning. Drop your weapon and release the hostage." But my stepfather didn't throw me out. She wasn't listening at all. Her mind completely fixated on getting another chance. "Ting Ting, you're better off with me than with your ignorant birth mother." I closed my eyes, awaiting the judgment of fate. All the effort I had put in up to that point was not in vain. 3, 2, 1. My stepfather knows I'm smart, ambitious, and have a good head on my shoulders. A deafening roar. The bullet missed me. I always put him first and seek his advice before making any major decisions. I opened my eyes. My sister lay fallen in a pool of blood. I even talked to him privately about taking his last name. The snipers outside were already in position. Of course, my mother, who only cares about shopping and has no mind of her own, knows nothing about this and couldn't care less. Looking at my sister on the ground, I crouched beside her and whispered. Mom refused to leave no matter what, saying she'd rather die right here. "Do you know why the gun didn't fire when you pulled the trigger?" She had sorely underestimated her stepfather. "Because it's a replica. I had your boyfriend in my pocket all along. Did you really think it was a coincidence he showed up? A man who could build an empire from nothing in the business world was nothing like her weak and incompetent, trust fund father. You're not the only one who gets a second chance." He wouldn't be fooled by her little tricks either. My sister stared at me, her face a mask of bitter resentment and helpless frustration. "Auntie Sue, go to the bedroom and pack a few things for her." I paid a small fortune to hire a private investigator, tracked down her deadbeat boyfriend, bribed him to go back to her, and convinced him to persuade her to buy a gun. He called for security. The hunted became the hunter. Just like that, Mom and my sister were thrown out. "She can't use a knife." She has to kill me with a replica gun. As my stepfather passed by my room, he gave my shoulder a pat. That way, the police outside will have no choice but to open fire to ensure my safety. Ting ting, you focus on your studies. Grown-up matters are none of your concern. She gets to eliminate a major problem without getting her own hands dirty. What's not to like? I nodded. 13. A fool is a fool, no matter how many lives they live. I wasn't hurt at all this time. After a brief questioning at the police station, they let me go home. 5. Sterling and Miles were already waiting for me at home. My life wasn't affected in the slightest. Where's your sister? Why didn't she come back with you? My mother privately asked me to go and plead with my stepfather. The moment Mom saw me, she rushed over and asked where my sister was. Of course, I wasn't going to do that. How did you know my sister was with me? So she started calling me every day, hurling the most vicious insults at me. Was it you who put the sleeping pills in the milk yesterday? Without our mother's support, my sister's life became even more difficult. Mom flatly denied it. She didn't do well in school and had no interest in studying. I showed her the video of her putting in the sleeping pills, and she was left speechless. Seeing this, our father pulled her out of school and, on top of that, racked up a mountain of debt. Sterling couldn't believe it. How utterly depraved must someone be to poison their own daughter? I laid out the photos and documents the private investigator had given me on the table. They were intimate photos of the young men she was keeping on the side, along with pictures of confidential company documents. Not long after, on my way to school, I was cut off by a group of thugs. She was selling this information to our competitors for profit. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. As it happened, the family car was in for service that day, so I was walking home alone. Her heart was ashen, her eyes full of hatred as she stared at me. She lunged like a madwoman to grab my hair, but was stopped. I hadn't gone far from the school gate when a man called out to me, "You wretched woman, you're the one who killed Lilith. Why did I ever give birth to you? Are you Ting Ting? Is this something a birth mother should say?" Before I could even answer, they clamped a hand over my mouth, blocked my path, and dragged me off to an abandoned warehouse. Sterling wants to divorce her. Anyway, my household registration has already been transferred to Sterling's name. Someone kicked me hard in the stomach, the pain so intense I couldn't get back on my feet. In this house now, she's the real outsider, biting the hand that feeds her. Those people didn't say a word, they just kept hitting me. Her signature moves were the whole hysterical routine. Tears, tantrums, threats of suicide, anything to avoid leaving. "So, sis, are you enjoying life in your fancy mansion?" Sterling just let her be, treating her like a useless burden they were stuck with. My sister stood before me, looking down at me from her full height. 14, you little bitch, I really underestimated you. That old man still treats you like a treasure, even after he kicked Mom out, and yet you're still living in that house. I gradually took over the full operations of the company while completing my university studies. Let's see what you've got. Is it some underhanded trick, or just that utterly forgettable face of yours? Miles and I became the most seamless partners, and he was also one of the company's shareholders. Soon after, the company went public. Sterling left the two of us behind and took off to travel the world in style. She's trying to hurt me, kill her. No, I need to hide, and fast. It won't be good if someone finds me. My mother seems to have been driven mad by the shock of my sister's death. It's not good to just stay cooped up at home like this. Chapter 2, Paid Content. I had her admitted to the city's psychiatric hospital, so she could stay there and get the rest and care she needed. Chapter 2, Paid Content. A few months later, I got a call from the hospital asking me to come in, just because she and her mother both like to use their looks to lure people in. They think everyone else is the same. My mother was dead. As she spoke, she took a small knife and waved it back and forth erratically in front of my face. In the middle of the night, she had a psychotic episode. She slipped out alone, climbed over the wall, and walked for dozens of kilometers, muttering the name Lilith all the while. Seeing that a knife was now involved, the surrounding thugs couldn't just sit back anymore and stepped in to stop her. In the pitch dark, she was accidentally struck and killed by a car. Brother Joe. We agreed we'd just rough him up a bit and let him go. Now you've taken off the blindfold and you're pulling a knife. Even in her final moments, her sister's name was on her lips. Mom, just how much did you love her, and how little did you care for me? Those underlings had a bit of a code, but they weren't about to stick around for any real knife or gunplay. Zhou Tao stepped forward to intervene. Pa, someone like her doesn't deserve that. As she said this, she spat in my face. But she did listen to reason and didn't go for the knife again. They only let me go home after beating me so badly I couldn't stand up. I hobbled to the curb and hailed a cab back to the villa. No one else was home today, only Auntie Sue. She looked at me with heartache and said, "You were perfectly fine when you left this morning. What on earth happened to you?" I was covered in cuts and bruises, and she tended to my wounds with the utmost care. 6. The two of them had made up. My mother chimed in with a cutting remark, "All you know how to do is cause trouble out there and never learn to behave. You're nothing like your sister, who always knows where to draw the line." That's right, he was leading a gang to beat me up in broad daylight, and by evening, he was swaggering around the house like he owned the place. Mom, Why aren't you asking me who did this? I said angrily. Who else could it be? What kind of shady business have you been up to outside? Ting Ting, what happened to your face? I pointed a finger in my sister's direction. She's the one who brought a bunch of thugs to corner me at the school gate. Are you insane? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? My sister was crying her eyes out, but then she turned around and falsely accused me. I produced the video footage I had already copied. That's right, after I got beaten up, I immediately went to a nearby place with surveillance and copied the footage of the whole incident, but my sister wasn't stupid either. The footage only showed me being abducted by her group at the school gate, and her figure appearing near the abandoned building, but all of this speaks volumes. We should call the police. This is beyond the pale, no longer a joke. Mom turned the tables and blamed me instead. My younger sister denied it, lying that she was just passing by and that she didn't do it. Mom, you have to believe me. My sister, of all people, acted like the victim. She rushed over and slapped me across the face. I was completely caught off guard. After hitting me, she cried so hard she fainted. From start to finish, she was the one playing the victim, yet I was the one who got hit. Well, look what you've done. You've made your sister faint. You're truly despicable. How could I have given birth to something like you? She carried her sister into the room and even called in a private doctor to examine her. I was covered in injuries, yet she didn't offer a single word of comfort. Ting Ting, don't blame your mother. That's just how she is. Let the doctor take a look at you in a moment as well. Inside the room, Mom was still cursing and swearing at me with the most vicious words. Who on earth does she take after? Such a foul temper, still seething. She came to my room that very night to warn me. Did you really think that would make you win? Don't be so naive. Mom and Dad have always favored me. It's always been me. Your worst days aren't here yet. I'll be waiting for your misery to come. In my past life, I always had it harder than her, and she never bothered me. But the moment my fortune turned for the better, she was consumed with envy and dragged us both down to ruin. In this life, she's convinced she'll come out on top, yet she still can't stand to see me comfortable, so she sent thugs to rough me up. No matter the time or place, she simply cannot bear to see me doing well. Yet in this life, it is still she who suffers. 7. As a result, we moved out of the villa and let go of all the domestic staff and drivers. Just like in the previous life, the Chi family officially entered a period of decline. Meanwhile, on my father's side, things were booming, surging ahead as if he had pulled off a perfect overtaking maneuver on a curve. We took on a lot of major clients and the business just kept growing. My sister never came to visit us again after we moved. He was reluctant at first, but with the company being so short-staffed, he eventually agreed. Essentially, the two of us spent every waking hour either at the office or working. We'd just go home to wash up, catch a few hours of sleep, and head right back to the company the next day. His attitude shifted from seeing me as a little sister to consulting me on everything. We are allies now. My sister stepped out of the car, decked out in designer labels, with her delinquent boyfriend by her side. Looks like someone's here to show off. Ting Ting, you moved and didn't tell me. This dump was a pain to find. Oh, is this your new boyfriend? Not much to look at, is he? I ignored her and deliberately walked around her, heading into the house. Her thug of a boyfriend blocked my path, acting like a complete lackey. He shoved the thug aside. I'm not one to be pushed around. I decided to strike first, and slapped her right back. Then he gave her another vicious kick. She tumbled to the ground in a heap. How dare you hit me, you bastard. My sister had never been so humiliated before, and she was throwing a fit outside. I grabbed a basin of water, opened the door, and poured it right over her head. If you've got this much time to waste cursing me out here, you'd be better off going home and keeping an eye on things. Unless you want to end up poor again. My sister hadn't expected me to say that. Thinking it was a curse aimed at her, she started shrieking like a fishwife right there at the door. In the end, even her good-for-nothing boyfriend couldn't stand to watch anymore and pulled her away. 8. But the difficulties still haven't passed. The company is in a transition period right now. If we don't make it through, all our efforts will have been for nothing, but I don't want to go anymore. I was busy preparing for the exams. I had 6 months to catch up on all the subjects. 6 months later, I was admitted to the best university in the country, just as I had hoped. My younger sister had already dropped out of school and landed a cushy, do-nothing job at our father's company. She spent her days idling around, hanging out with her deadbeat boyfriend, living off the family dime without a care in the world, since it was a family affair. We kept it simple, just a few tables for close relatives, sharing a casual meal together. Somehow, my sister got wind of the news and reserved a table at the same hotel for the very same day. The good news for her, however, was that she was pregnant. Celebrating her journey into motherhood, she strutted into my private room with an air of superiority, completely disregarding the crowd present. What does it matter if you get top marks? You'll still end up working for someone else. Not like me. I have a husband who dotes on me, a father who provides. and a company to inherit one day. With that, she walked right up to me and said mockingly, "You loser, I won in the end. My life has always been better than yours." She threw a public tantrum, while Dad just stood by and watched, unmoved. The Chi family relatives whispered among themselves, "Enough already, where's the waiter? From now on, everything I have belongs to Ting Ting. She is my daughter." Today, we're not just celebrating my daughter getting into university, but also officially changing her surname to Chi. He never once asked me to call him anything else. Today, just to help me hold my head up in front of my own father and sister, he actually promised to leave his entire estate to me. In this moment, what does it matter if we're related by blood or not, Dad? I called out in front of everyone. "A company about to go bankrupt isn't worth having," my younger sister said sourly. "You're not welcome here. Please leave." "Well, I don't want to stay here anyway." The whole time, Dad trailed after my younger sister, trying to win her favor. 9. He taught me everything he knew without holding back. Sitting across from us was a pivotal figure in the entire industry, Boss Joe. Story 2. My sister suffered a heart attack and passed away despite emergency efforts. On the day of her burial, her unhinged lawyer ex, the prince of Beijing's elite circle, and a Yandera top celebrity showed up at my door. Upon learning of her death, they snapped on the spot and were ready to dig up her grave and desecrate her body. I stood in front of her grave, pleading desperately, "Respect the dead. If you're angry, take it out on me instead." I was forced to become my sister's stand-in and subjected to their relentless humiliation. They beat me until I was bruised and battered, then forced me to film all sorts of unspeakable videos. After barely managing to escape, I tried to bring them to justice. A ruthless lawyer threatened to ruin my reputation completely. The Beijing elite's golden boy applied internal pressure, leaving me with nowhere to turn for help. A Yandera top celebrity released the video, claiming I deliberately seduced him. I became the central figure in a sex scandal, with my reputation completely ruined. My parents even publicly disowned me through a newspaper announcement. I went home to confront them, only to overhear my sister's gloating voice. "If it weren't for Mom and Dad faking their deaths to escape, I'd never have gotten away from those lunatics. Thank God for that idiot Lena, otherwise I would have been the one in that sex scandal." Completely shattered, I stormed into the house ready to take my sister down with me, but ended up being killed by our parents instead. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my sister had her heart attack. My poor Tessa, you were only 20. How could you just die like this? How could you leave Mom and Dad behind? How are we supposed to go on without you? The doctor regretfully announced that Tessa had not survived the resuscitation efforts. My mother collapsed into my father's arms. Weeping uncontrollably, I watched this farce unfold with cold detachment, sneering inwardly all the while. In my past life, I was completely taken in by her masterful acting, convinced that Tessa had truly died despite the rescue efforts. Not only did I endure my mother's abuse, but when those 3 lunatics tried to dig up the grave and desecrate the body, I stepped forward to protect my sister's remains. I was terrified that my parents, already reeling from the pain of losing their daughter, would suffer another devastating blow, but in the end, my parents helped Tessa fake her death to escape, giving her a brilliant future. Meanwhile, I was thrown to the wolves, endured endless torment, and was ultimately killed by my own parents and left to rot in the wilderness. At that thought, I rushed forward and dropped to my knees with a thud in front of the emergency room doors, raising my voice. I shouted toward the inside of the emergency room, "Don't you worry, little sister. I'll take good care of our parents for you. If you ever miss Mom and Dad, just send them a dream. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to join you down there." My mother's wailing suddenly cut off as she turned to glare at me with pure venom in her eyes. "You wicked girl, how dare you say such things? You're the one who's going to hell." My father also looked at me disapprovingly. Who in their right mind curses their own parents to die early? You must have a death wish. I desperately forced out a few tears, looking at my parents with profound anguish. "You've doted on Tessa for 20 years, always giving her everything she wanted. How could you not even honor her final wish?" My mother was left speechless by my words. My dad finally managed to mutter a stiff denial after a long pause. Wiping tears from my face, I choked out a promise to my parents that I'd give Tessa a proper, dignified funeral. I've already posted about Tessa's passing on social media. I'm sure our relatives will be here soon. I'll make sure Tessa gets the send-off she deserves. Nothing less than perfect. As I spoke, I pulled out my phone and dialed the funeral home. My mother turned pale with shock, rushed over, and knocked the phone out of my hand. "Who said you could call the funeral home and delete that social media post right now?" My parents' phones started ringing one after another. All calls from people offering condolences after hearing about Tessa's passing. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of my mother's flustered expression, unable to voice her distress, thinking of helping Tessa fake her death in this lifetime. Dream on. After barely managing to deal with all the relatives, my mother completely lost her composure when she saw me about to call the funeral home. She dropped to her knees with a thud, her raised voice drawing curious glances from people in other hospital rooms. "I'm begging you, just let your sister rest in peace. We don't want a lavish funeral for her, and we certainly don't want her to be used as a tool for you to make money." As she spoke, my mother kowtowed to me 3 times, each time with a heavy thud. She was crying so hard, tears and mucus streaming down her face, that anyone would have thought she was the most devoted mother. The onlookers chimed in with unsolicited advice, urging me to respect my parents' wishes, while some even resorted to sarcastic remarks. "Your sister is already gone, and you're still trying to squeeze every last bit of value out of her. What a modern-day skinflint. You won't even spare your own sister. Your parents wasted all those years raising you." Clutching my chest, I took a few steps back and stared at my mother in disbelief. I just wanted my sister to have a dignified farewell. What did I do wrong? She's my own sister. Why would I ever do anything to harm her? Moved by my heartfelt words, everyone changed their tone and urged my mother to let Tessa go with dignity. My mother was overwhelmed by their pressure and couldn't even muster a word of refusal. "But if we actually give Tessa a grand funeral, there's no way to fake her death and escape." Just as my mother was caught in a dilemma, my father stepped up. He made the final call and decided to hold a low-key funeral. He put it in high-sounding terms: "The funeral procedures back in our hometown are too complicated. Who has the time for all that? Let's just keep it simple with a private memorial among ourselves." I smiled in agreement, then immediately turned and grabbed the doctor who had just emerged from the emergency room, speaking with utmost seriousness. My sister had previously registered as an organ donor. "As her family member, I respect her wishes. Please check which of her organs are suitable and transplant them all." The doctor's eyes lit up, and he grasped my hand, expressing profound gratitude. He moved quickly, immediately presenting the organ donation agreement for me to sign. My mother was so startled she slid off the hospital bench and stumbled over to stop me. She snatched the agreement and tore it to shreds. Suppressing her anger, she snapped irritably, "Who gave permission for organ donation?" "Tessa is my daughter." And I said no means no. I opened my sister's organ donor card on my phone and held it up in front of my mom. "This was a decision Tessa made on her 18th birthday. We have no right to disagree." The doctor chimed in as well, even explaining the law to my mom right there in front of everyone. My mother was completely against organ donation and refused to consider it no matter what. She even lay down in the middle of the hallway and threatened the doctors, "If you dare to harvest my daughter's organs, you'll have to step over my dead body first." Among the onlookers was a family member waiting for an organ transplant, and seeing the opportunity right in front of her, she wasn't about to let it slip away. She burst out of the crowd, tearfully guilt-tripping my mother. "My son is only 8 years old and waiting for an organ transplant. All our family's hopes rest on you." People around us tried to persuade my mother, telling her that organ donation saves many families and she shouldn't refuse, but since my sister wasn't actually dead, my mother naturally couldn't agree to organ donation. She had no intention of causing her daughter's death. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably, yet she refused to give in. No matter how much the other party tried to guilt-trip her, her response was always the same: "I won't donate." Seeing that there was little hope, the other party slunk back into the crowd. My mother, like a triumphant rooster, scanned the room and then turned her fury on me. "Tessa is your own sister. How could you wish for her to die in such a wretched state?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly inside. My own sister, the same sister who tried to send her own sibling to an early grave. In their past life, Ryan and the other two showed up on the very day Tessa was buried. Chapter 2. My father used taking care of my sobbing mother as an excuse to hide, leaving me alone to face them. When they found out Tessa had played with their emotions, they had her grave dug up and her body desecrated on the spot. Even in death, Tessa will pay the price she deserves. Like a fool, I stood in front of Tessa's grave, telling them to direct all their anger at me. I was forced to become Tessa's substitute and bear the brunt of their rage. First, they beat me until my skin was torn and flesh was exposed, leaving no part of my body unharmed. Then, they forced me to film all sorts of unspeakable videos. That period felt like living in hell. I barely escaped with my life and tried to bring them to justice, but it was all in vain. First, Lawyer Phoenix threatened me: "We could crush you like an ant. Don't waste your efforts, or I'll ruin your reputation." Then Ryan, the so-called crown prince of Beijing's elite circles, applied internal pressure with his casual remark: "She's a pathological liar." I was left with nowhere to turn, and was even detained by the police for a week on charges of obstructing official duties. I thought I had hit rock bottom, but it turned out that was only the beginning. Top celebrity Leo publicly released the video he forced me to film, claiming I had deliberately seduced him. His team pushed me into the trending topics and even hired trolls to flood the comment sections of major influencer accounts, calling me a well-known socialite in the industry. I became an overnight sensation, only to have my reputation ruined, and now I have to watch my back on the streets for fear of being attacked. The moment I saw my parents publicly disown me in the newspaper, I finally realized I was nothing but a discarded pawn. In the background, My mother was still stubbornly refusing to sign the organ donation consent form. I couldn't help but wonder, if I were the one about to donate my organs, would she still argue so vehemently? She'd probably sign without a second thought, saying it's my good fortune. My father gave the doctor an ingratiating smile and pulled him aside to whisper something. All I could see was my father making a hand gesture to the other person. The doctor didn't bring up the organ donation matter again, which made my mother breathe a sigh of relief. She shot me a murderous glare. Take Tessa home first. Just wait till I deal with you later. I watched the hurried pace toward the morgue, a smirk playing on my lips. I hoped Tessa could keep her composure and not slip up in front of the relatives once we got home. Before we even reached home, I could see our front door wide open from a distance. My mother frowned and demanded, "Didn't you lock the door when you left? We had just parked when?" Before my mom could rush into the house, relatives swarmed around us. My father looked at the relatives in surprise, clearly annoyed by their unexpected visit. "Why did you show up out of the blue without even giving us a heads up?" Grandma's cane came down hard on my father's leg. She shot him a glare and snapped, "Tessa is my own granddaughter. How could I not be here?" The other relatives chimed in, all talking over each other to blame my parents, while also pointing out the funeral setup. As they spoke, they went ahead and began moving Tessa's body out of the car. My parents watched with bated breath, terrified they might catch on, but had no good reason to refuse. I heard someone mutter, "The recently deceased really are different. Huh, still warm and everything." My dad broke out in a cold sweat, frantically took Tessa, and headed straight for her room. I called out to my dad, "The wake is in the living room. Why are you carrying Tessa to her room?" My uncle thought my father was so overwhelmed with grief that he'd even forgotten where his own living room was, and insisted on taking over for him. The moment he took over, Tessa fell heavily to the ground. I caught a glimpse of Tessa's brows furrowing slightly in pain, but she didn't dare cry out, gritting her teeth to endure it. My mother watched helplessly as Tessa fell, her heart nearly leaping out of her chest. "If you can't handle it, don't push yourself. You're going to hurt Tessa. How could a dead person feel pain? Don't joke around, sis." My dad, afraid that Tessa's fake death would be exposed, quickly covered for my mom. Seeing that no one was suspicious, my dad hurriedly placed Tessa on the funeral bed, worried that something else might go wrong. My aunt suggested hiring a mortician for Tessa, but my mom vetoed the idea. "That's for making up the dead. How morbid." "Absolutely not." My aunt looked at my mom strangely, "But Tessa has passed away. If she were still alive, who would even suggest getting a mortician?" My aunt glanced at Tessa lying on the funeral bed, her confusion growing deeper. "Lena, you don't think you got a misdiagnosis from some quack doctor, do you? Maybe Tessa is still alive." While saying it was impossible, I wasn't idle with my hands either. I went straight for the most painful spots with full force. Dead people can't feel pain. I'll know for sure with one pinch. Tessa turned pale from my pinching. Her whole body tensed up, but she didn't dare furrow her brows. My mother shoved me aside with force, like a mother wolf protecting her cub. I watched Tessa take her last breath with my own eyes. "There's no way she could still be alive. You're just trying to take advantage of her, and I won't let your dirty scheme succeed." I let out a long sigh and said, "Mom, can you please stop making a scene here? She's my own sister. Nobody could be happier than I am that she's alive." My mother stood guard in front of Tessa, grumbling and refusing to budge no matter who tried to persuade her. My aunt spoke up for me, saying I meant well, and other relatives also tried to talk some sense into my mom. Watching my mother's unreasonable behavior, I pretended to give in. "You're absolutely right. Let's just pick a day and get Tessa buried as soon as possible." My mother, afraid that delays might bring trouble, didn't even consult the almanac and insisted on holding the burial tomorrow. Although our relatives thought the timing was too rushed, they still agreed to my mother's request. That evening, my parents volunteered to keep vigil for Tessa, saying they wanted to accompany her one last time. I stood outside the door listening to Tessa complain to our parents. "Lena pinched me so hard, my hand is all bruised and it hurts so much. Wah." My mom looked sympathetically at the fingernail-sized bruise on Tessa's arm and promised with full confidence that I would get what I deserved. I took out my phone and sent a text to the pinned contact. "I've sent you the address for Tessa's burial. Don't be late tomorrow." After putting away my phone, I watched the harmonious family inside and smiled silently. "I hope you'll be smiling just as happily tomorrow." The next morning, my father proposed laying Tessa to rest to help her escape this world. I hurried over to my parents, putting on a troubled expression. "Cremation is mandatory now. I've even arranged for the hearse from the funeral home." My dad had planned to go along with the mistake, intending to let Tessa escape on the way to her supposed cremation. His plan seemed perfect, but the moment he opened the door, he was completely stunned. A large group of mourning relatives stood outside the door, glaring disapprovingly at my father. Luckily we had the foresight to come early, otherwise just the three of you wouldn't have been able to handle everything. "We also want to accompany Tessa on her final journey." I tried to persuade my father. "Dad, at least let everyone come to the funeral home to say a final goodbye to Tessa." My father broke into a cold sweat, knowing that agreeing would be a death sentence for Tessa, seeing the house filled with mourners. My mother grew even more determined to insist on a traditional burial. She plopped down on the floor and threw a tantrum like a hysterical shrew. I refuse cremation, it has to be a burial. Trying to get Tessa out under everyone's watchful eyes is next to impossible. Only a traditional burial offers a glimmer of hope. Chapter 3. My relatives spent ages trying to talk my mom around, but it was all for nothing. I let out a sigh, looking utterly resigned, then let Tessa rest in peace. Now everyone can finally pay their respects. My mother couldn't refuse any longer and had to reluctantly agree. People accompanied Tessa's coffin the entire way, leaving my parents no opportunity to offer any last words. They could only write a note and secretly slip it into the coffin when no one was looking. Since our hometown doesn't allow traditional burials, we had to find a random spot on the barren hill near the cemetery. By the time we arrived, out of breath, the auspicious hour was nearly over. Missing the auspicious hour is bad luck. If we don't bury our sister soon, it'll ruin the feng shui. The moment Grandma heard it would affect the family's feng shui, she couldn't stay seated any longer. She directed her relatives to dig the grave. Just as they were about to bury Tessa, I glanced at the time. The auspicious moment had passed. A sinister voice rang out from nearby. Who gave you permission to dig graves and bury bodies here, consumed by guilt? The group frantically swung their shovels to restore the dug-up area to its original state. Terrified of being caught for the illegal burial, they packed the soil down so tightly that Tessa was left without even a breath of air. By the time they arrived, the ground had already been returned to its undisturbed condition. The relatives, mistaking them for park staff, smiled and made light-hearted excuses to brush off the situation. But I recognized them instantly, the three lunatics who had condemned me to hell in my past life. The moment they saw me, they instinctively cried out, "Tessa!" Before I could even retort, their gaze shifted to the tombstone I was holding, and their eyes instantly reddened. Gnashing their teeth, they snarled, "Dead, don't think for a second that death will make me forget what you've done. I'll dig up your grave and desecrate your corpse if I have to. But you will pay for this today." My mother's face turned deathly pale the moment she saw the three of them. Tessa leveraged her looks to flirt with multiple men, and whenever she found a promising catch, she'd even share the details with my mom. Clearly, my mother had seen photos of all three of them before. My mother pretended to be a quail on the sidelines, and my father didn't dare to step in and stop it. The three of them waved their hands, and the crowd behind them swarmed forward, ready to dig up the grave and desecrate the corpse, but our relatives wouldn't have it. What did Tessa ever do to you? Can't you even let her rest in peace? Don't you understand the respect owed to the deceased? You look decent on the outside, but you're worse than animals. Anyone who dares to dig up Tessa's grave today will have to go through me. They brandished their shovels, blocking the path in front of Tessa's grave. Suddenly, a rhythmic tapping sound echoed. I pointed at Tessa's grave, my face full of disbelief. "This voice seems to be coming from here," Tessa screamed from inside the coffin. "Help, I'm not dead. Whoa, I don't want to die. Dad, Mom, let me out of here, quick." Everyone was frozen in place, too terrified to move, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief, and suddenly screamed. Could it be that Tessa's corpse reanimated because we missed the auspicious hour? Her words sent chills down everyone's spines, and no one dared to rescue Tessa. The crowd shuffled nervously, but no one dared take a single step closer to Tessa's grave. Ryan sneered, "Are you all in cahoots with Tessa, putting on some kind of show?" He cast a skeptical glance at everyone present, while relatives protested their innocence, trying to clear their names. Someone mustered the courage to confront Ryan, demanding to know who they were and why they harbored such hatred for Tessa that they would desecrate her grave. Upon hearing the question, Ryan burst into laughter. "Well, we all used to be Tessa's boyfriends." The moment these words were spoken, everyone chimed in unison. "No way, Tessa has never even been in a relationship." Tessa had always been the picture of innocence around them, so much so that even telling a simple lie about never dating seemed impossible, let alone three-timing. Seeing the disbelief on their relatives' faces, Leo kindly handed them a stack of photos. Every single photo featured Tessa, but each time with a different man. He pointed helpfully at the timestamp beneath the photo. She wasn't just dating the three of us, she was seeing all these men at the same time. The crowd flipped through the photos, checking the timestamps, and erupted in an uproar. In just 2 years, Tessa had managed to date over a dozen boyfriends. Phoenix adjusted his glasses and said coldly, "She's been playing us for fools, but we're not pushovers." My father hatched a plan and mustered the courage to confront Ryan and his crew. "You can't just claim something's true and expect us to believe it. Photos can be faked, you know. If you're so capable, why don't you rescue Tessa and have her confront you herself?" Ryan saw right through my father's little scheme and shot him a look of utter disdain. "I still have that video of your daughter. Should I make it public?" Chapter 4. You think reverse psychology works on us? Don't kid yourself. My mother, driven by maternal instinct, tried to rush forward to save Tessa but was held back by Phoenix. Phoenix stared at Tessa's grave with shadowed eyes, his words dripping with cruel indifference. Isn't she already dead? Then she should just stay dead. My mother, terrified that Tessa would be smothered to death, pointed at me and knelt before Ryan, begging desperately. She's Tessa's sister, hasn't even been in a relationship once. I'm willing to trade her for Tessa. Do whatever you want with her, you can even kill her if you like, just let Tessa go, please. The moment my mother finished speaking, the room fell silent. Relatives condemned my mother's actions, mocking and ridiculing her. Phoenix cleared his throat and sternly rejected my mother's proposal. Every grievance has its source, every debt its debtor. We don't make a habit of implicating the innocent. Ryan looked me up and down. Remaining silent for a long moment, my mother broke down emotionally, screaming at me and demanding that I sacrifice myself. Heartbroken, I looked at my mother, clutching my chest as I backed away. I'm your daughter too. Why should I be the one to clean up my sister's mess? My mother snorted coldly, her eyes filled with icy detachment. After all these years I've raised you, it's only right that you do this for Tessa. My father agreed with my mother, but he stated it with unwavering conviction. Parents' orders and matchmakers' words, we have the right to decide for you. Ryan frowned and coldly rejected my mother's proposal. Seeing that my mother still wanted to plead her case, he spoke up, say another word, and Tessa will die in her own grave. My mother immediately fell silent. The standoff continued as Tessa's cries grew fainter, the sound of her pounding against the coffin nearly inaudible. Her voice hoarse and choked with tears, she begged Ryan and the others to rescue Tessa. If we don't save her now, she's going to die. After exchanging glances, Ryan and the two others finally took pity and ordered someone to dig up Tessa's grave. The moment Tessa was rescued, her face was deathly pale and she remained unresponsive no matter how much we called out to her. My mother threw herself over Tessa, weeping and wailing, begging everyone to perform CPR on her. The relatives were terrified that Tessa might be a reanimated corpse and didn't dare to help. Ryan and his crew actually wanted Tessa dead, so they naturally ignored my mother's pleas. Who knows if she's even alive or dead? If you want it done, do it yourself. My mom had no choice but to step in herself, but her technique was all wrong. After several attempts, not only did Tessa's condition fail to improve, she was now fighting for her life. I ran through the symptoms of asphyxiation in my head, but Tessa didn't match a single one, clearly. She wasn't actually suffocating at all, she was faking the whole thing. Ryan and I exchanged a look, and he slowly walked over to Tessa before kicking her in the stomach with all his strength. Tessa held it in, but her brow furrowed tightly. Seeing that Ryan's method worked, the crowd urged him to kick her a few more times. True to expectations, Ryan's kicks grew progressively more forceful with each strike. After several attempts, Ryan stared at Tessa lying motionless on the ground and let out a bitter, frustrated laugh. Since you refused to wake up, you might as well spend the rest of your life bedridden. The next instant, Tessa cried out in pain. Ryan said with a sinister tone, since everyone's awake, let's settle this properly. Tessa trembled violently upon hearing those words. She put on an ingratiating smile, trying to brush it off, but was completely ignored. They slammed the photos down in front of Tessa. Don't you have anything to explain to us? Tessa gave an awkward smile without even glancing at the photos. It's all a misunderstanding. I was just putting on an act with them. What I have with you is real. The three of them exchanged knowing glances and smirked. Of course they knew they were the real deal. After all, those photos were faked by us together. On the very day I was reborn, I sought out Ryan and the other two, and told them the whole truth. Phoenix squinted at me, his tone dripping with skepticism. Why should we believe what you're saying is true? I smiled confidently, knowing that being Tessa's biological sister was more than enough. What's more, I have the evidence right here. I showed them Tessa's social media posts. Afraid of being exposed, she flaunted their gifts on her main account while chatting with each of them on different alt accounts. Chapter 5. Once everyone compared notes, the truth came out. Sure enough, they were all just fish in Tessa's pond. Ryan kicked the chair away in a fit of rage and let out a string of curses. Leo's expression darkened noticeably. Phoenix's grip on the phone tightened, veins bulging on his hand. Unable to contain their fury, they immediately set out to confront Tessa. I cleared my throat and said, I overheard Tessa discussing a fake death plan with my parents. Wouldn't it be better to expose her when the time comes? The three of them finally sat down, suppressing their anger. Ryan was the first to speak up, asking me why I was helping them. My mother and the others are trying to pull a switcheroo, making me take the fall for Tessa. The three looked at me with a hint of sympathy and gladly accepted my proposal. Everything that follows is within our calculations. Tessa is still trying to sweet-talk Ryan and the others, and they're amused by her clownish antics, seeing that they remain unmoved. Tessa clings to Ryan's pant leg, putting on a pitiful expression. I'll do anything if you just trust me. Ryan crouched beside Tessa, who lay collapsed on the ground, gently stroking her face with a delighted smile. Then come back with us, and let's see your sincerity. Tessa stared in disbelief at the bodyguards rushing to take her away, screaming desperately at my mother. Mom, save me. I don't want to go with them. My mother rushed up to the bodyguard and clung desperately to Tessa's hand, refusing to let go. What's the difference between you and human traffickers? I won't allow this. If you dare take my daughter away, I'll call the police. Leo showed a hint of hesitation. After all, as a public figure, he had to consider the consequences, but Ryan's words instantly put his worries to rest. Even if they dared to call the police, no one would dare investigate us. Leo and Phoenix each grabbed one of my mother's arms and shoved her aside. They tossed Tessa into the car and sped off without a second glance. I watched Tessa being taken away by Ryan and his crew, feeling completely unfazed. She brought this on herself, so she'll have to face the consequences. No sooner had Ryan and his group left than my parents rushed to the police station to file a report, but Ryan had already pulled some strings, so they naturally came back empty-handed. The officer who responded to the call even threatened my mom. If you file another false report, I'll have you arrested. My mom threw a hysterical fit at home, demanding that my dad pull some strings to get Tessa out. My dad sat on the couch smoking, looking utterly defeated. Hearing what my mom said, he flew into a rage and slammed his hand on the table. Do you think I haven't tried? I begged everyone I could think of, but it's useless. It's all her fault for provoking those lunatics. They're all powerful people. Crushing us would be as easy as stepping on ants. Are you trying to get me thrown in jail? I watched my parents' argument coldly, without a single ripple of emotion in my heart. In my past life, they abandoned me for Tessa, even cutting ties with me when I was at my lowest. Now that Tessa's just been taken in for questioning, why are they suddenly at each other's throats? In the end, my parents parted ways on bitter terms, seeing she couldn't win the argument with my dad. My mom then turned her anger on me, her eyes burned with venomous hatred. If you had been willing to suffer in Tessa's place, she never would have been taken. Why did you have to destroy our family? My father sat in silence, clearly sharing the same sentiment. I desperately forced out a few tears, turning my watery eyes toward my mother. Then why did you both throw me into the lion's den? You only helped Tessa fake her death because you knew those three were dangerous, didn't you? For a while after that, Ryan kept sending me videos of Tessa being tortured from time to time. I pretended to know nothing and showed those videos to my parents. Watching my parents in agony filled me with a twisted sense of satisfaction. It must have been agony for them to watch their most beloved daughter being humiliated right before their eyes. But this is only a fifth of the suffering I endured in my past life. Their misery is far from over. A week after Tessa was taken away by Ryan and his crew, her explicit photos were made public. Netizens went wild sharing the photos, and Leo dropped a few hints in his fan group, claiming Tessa had once tried to seduce him. His fans flooded the comments with vicious insults against Tessa, even spreading malicious rumors about her. Relatives started calling my parents, blaming them for failing to discipline their own daughter properly. My mother looked at those appalling photos online, her lips blistering with anxiety, yet she still defended Tessa. Those lunatics must have forced her into this. She would never do it willingly. Watching her desperately defend Tessa made my heart sink uncontrollably. In my past life, after I was embroiled in the photo scandal, paparazzi and influencers camped outside my doorstep. They cornered my mother at our door, but instead of defending me, she even claimed that's just the kind of person I am. Lena never grew up with us, so it's no surprise she turned out this way. With her endorsement, everyone was even more convinced. I thought she just loved Tessa a little more than me. Only now do I realize she never really saw me as her daughter. She blamed everything on my father. First, she blamed my dad for suggesting the fake death plan that led to Tessa being taken by Ryan. Then she accused him of being useless for failing to rescue Tessa. My dad's face grew darker, and his hands on his knees clenched tighter and tighter. The next second, he completely snapped under my mom's relentless finger-pointing. He slammed the table and stood up. Why don't you admit it's your failure to raise your daughter properly that made her so shameless? In those photos, her expression of enjoyment hardly looks forced. She's completely disgraced me. But even so, my father never mentioned cutting ties with Tessa. My father took a deep drag of his cigarette, the smoke rings he exhaled completely obscuring his expression, leaving only his deep voice audible. Lena, go and admit it right now. The person in the photo is you. I rolled my eyes dramatically and continued scrolling through my phone, using my actions to reject his demand. My mother's eyes lit up, and seeing my indifference, she reached over to snatch my phone, ready to take matters into her own hands. I sidestepped and retorted, if you want to admit it, go ahead. I'm not about to drag my own name through the mud. My mother was so furious that veins bulged on her forehead. She forced a stiff smile and gritted her teeth as she agreed, but when I stepped out of the shower that night, the door I had locked was wide open, and my phone had vanished into thin air. I logged into Weibo on my computer, and my eyes were immediately drawn to the top trending topic, Scandal Photogate, female lead reveals her identity. I clicked into the hashtag and realized the Weibo account claiming to be the scandal's female lead was actually mine, with my missing phone and that identity-confessing Weibo post. It's obvious who the thief is. My mom was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, humming a tune. Since you refuse to admit it, I'll just do it for you. Trying to clear your name is pointless. Just admit it already. I scoffed and turned back to my room. Admit it, in your dreams, though I resemble Tessa 90%, that remaining 10% is what makes her uniquely herself. Everyone can easily tell us apart. That's why, growing up, no one outside our family knew Tessa and I were twin sisters. I spliced my selfie with Tessa's photo and posted it directly on Weibo. Didn't even need to point out the differences. I never thought I'd be forced by my own parents to prove my innocence one day. My ambiguous remarks were quickly interpreted in over a dozen different ways by netizens, with the photos serving as undeniable evidence. The very netizens who had been criticizing me realized they were being used as pawns and, fueled by anger, dug up every last detail about Tessa. Some of the information was completely unknown even to me, such as Tessa having had 10 abortions in 2 years. Ryan added fuel to the fire by releasing those unsavory videos they had filmed, making Tessa a hot topic all over again. Tessa's reputation was completely ruined, and they took advantage of the situation to send her into the world of pleasure, squeezing every last bit of value from her. My parents couldn't escape the fallout either. Nearing retirement, they were reported online for improper family conduct and ultimately fired by their company. Not only did they not receive a single penny of their pension, but they also had to pay compensation to the company. I deliberately leaked Tessa's news to them, leaving them drowning in tears and unable to pull themselves together. After all, they played their part in my suffering too. It's only fair they get a taste of it themselves. Chapter 12. The next time I heard about Tessa was when Ryan called. On the other end of the line, he congratulated me with a laugh. Tessa fell ill and died in a client's bed. I wasn't surprised by this outcome. Every bit of vengeance I failed to exact in my past life has now been settled in this one. Chapter 6. When Ryan brought Tessa's body back, my mother had a mental breakdown upon seeing her cold, lifeless form. She kept murmuring, "Tessa, it's all my fault. Please forgive me, my child." My mother ran out of the house and never came back. For the first month or two, my father searched for her with all his heart and soul. Whether it was putting up flyers on the streets or posting missing person notices online, all efforts came to nothing. He hadn't received even the faintest clue. As time went on, my father stopped looking for my mother and even moved his new lover into our home. He declared with conviction, "I deserve my own life too, and I'll need someone to take care of me when I'm old." I watched the 6-year-old boy by his new lover's side, his face a near-perfect copy of my father's, and smiled with bitter amusement. So my father had been cheating all along. After 3 years of working, I decided to better myself and applied for a master's program at a top-tier university in the country. On the day of my graduate school graduation, a deranged woman crashed the ceremony. She grabbed my hand and kept apologizing to me over and over. "It's my fault, darling. I never should have made you fake your death. Tessa, please forgive me, won't you?" As I looked at my mother, who, even in her madness, hadn't forgotten Tessa, I no longer felt the sorrow I once had. I gently moved her hand away, my expression cold and detached. "You've mistaken me for someone else. I'm not your daughter." I watched as security escorted my mother away, feeling neither sorrow nor joy. Perhaps I was never destined to have a close bond with my parents, but I can still make my own life extraordinary. Story 2. In my previous life, my sister sacrificed our entire family for the sake of her one true love. After being reborn, she still showed no remorse and tried to seize my space first. However, she didn't expect that this time, all of us had been reborn. 1. Mom, where's the bracelet Grandma left behind? The one Grandma left before she passed away. My sister, who usually lounged in bed playing on her phone, suddenly burst out of her room like a madwoman. Ignoring her disheveled appearance, she shouted urgently, "What?" Mom responded, confused. My sister rushed into my bedroom, then came out frowning and said impatiently, "The silver bracelet Grandma wore before she died." She was so immersed in the joy of being reborn that she didn't notice the subtle change in Mom's expression at all. At this moment, Dad and I had just arrived home. As soon as she saw me, my sister's face lit up. She quickly grabbed my hand, and when she saw it was empty, her expression darkened instantly. "Giselle, where's your bracelet? Give it to me now." Mom and I exchanged a glance and immediately understood that she had also come back. I just didn't expect that even though she had personally killed me, Mom, and Dad in the previous life, she could still talk to us without batting an eyelid. But I didn't show it. I just replied indifferently, "What bracelet? When did I ever wear a bracelet? In the previous life." We accidentally found that bracelet when we went to clean our old hometown a few days before the apocalypse. My sister thought it was unlucky because Grandma had worn it during her lifetime, and she casually threw it to me, who knew it was actually a treasure with its own space. It could store a large amount of food, and there was also sweet spring water and fertile farmland inside. It was precisely because of this bracelet that our family could survive in that old house during the extremely hot weather. Only then did my sister slap her forehead and ask urgently, "What date is it now?" When she learned that it was a month before the apocalypse, her excitement became almost palpable. Great, great, this time, Everett won't have to suffer so much. As soon as she finished speaking, Mom and Dad's expressions changed abruptly. Everett, the name my sister mentioned, was the love of her life. In the previous life, in order to save him, my sister brutally killed me. She lied that I had a conflict with people looking for water outside, and she survived only because Everett saved her. Mom and Dad were heartbroken, but in the apocalypse, it was already difficult to stay alive, so they couldn't focus on anything else and could only allow Everett to enter our home. However, my sister and the others soon discovered that the bracelet recognized its master, and only I could enter that space. As food became scarcer and scarcer, under Everett's impatient gaze, my sister finally locked Mom and Dad outside, letting them die of dehydration in the extremely hot weather. Perhaps even heaven couldn't stand it. When we opened our eyes, we had all been reborn, and a whole month earlier than my sister. This time, we must prevent the tragedy of the previous life from repeating itself. As for my sister, this ungrateful wretch, since that's the case, let her fend for herself in the apocalypse, too. When my sister saw that all our eyes were on her, she immediately shut up and composed herself, afraid that we would notice something amiss. Ignoring her pajamas, she tried to cover up her eagerness and shouted, "I'm going out." Then she turned and disappeared from sight, obviously going to find her beloved Everett. Mom, Dad, and I sat silently at the table. Finally, Dad broke the silence. "Wait, Jen, we always said that Genevieve lacked a sense of security because she was born prematurely, but in the previous life, she didn't hesitate to kill us." Mom's voice was choked with sobs. "I used to think that since I raised her, she was my daughter, and it didn't matter if she was my biological child or not." However, the experiences of the previous life told her that it wasn't the case at all. My sister was adopted by Mom and Dad from an orphanage, unexpectedly. 2 years after the adoption, Mom got pregnant with me. At that time, my sister showed her disgust and even persuaded Mom to abort me more than once. Mom originally thought it was just a sign of her lack of security, besides giving her more care. She didn't pay too much attention, but it ultimately led to that tragic ending. This time around, we were busy storing food in the space and looking for a place to stay during the apocalypse, but we didn't mention my sister at all. Now that she was back, it seemed that we had already decided how to deal with her. Let her fend for herself. Mom wiped away her tears and gently stroked my hand. "I don't ask for anything else. As long as our family of 3 can live well, that's more than enough." "We will," I comforted her softly. 3 in the evening, my sister finally came back. Apparently, she had successfully persuaded Everett, and a relaxed expression naturally showed on her face. "Mom, how much money is left at home?" Mom didn't respond, but Dad asked, "What do you need the money for?" My sister was already 28 years old. Over the years, she had guarded against me like a thief. She neither went out to work nor contributed to the family, just living off Mom and Dad. So basically, all her expenses came from asking Mom and Dad for money. "Just tell me, I want to know." My sister plopped down next to Dad, squeezing me aside, and said, "Give me 1,000,000 yuan, and I'll go out to work. What do you think?" She looked as if Mom and Dad were her personal ATMs. Our family was just an ordinary middle-class family. To come up with 1,000,000 yuan, we would probably have to sell our house. After saying that, my sister seemed to realize this, but she still held Dad's hand and coquettishly said, "Dear Dad, if you really can't, you can take out a loan. It's okay. It's just 1,000,000 yuan. Just 1,000,000 yuan." Dad's face had turned extremely terrible looking. My sister knew that the family was about to face difficulties, but instead of reminding us, she was so heartless. Finally, Dad couldn't take it anymore and slapped her across the face. Before my sister could react, she fell to the ground. "Genevieve, I've been too lenient with you all these years. I've spoiled you rotten. Do you even care about this family anymore?" My sister had never been beaten since she was a child. Her eyes immediately turned red. Maybe she knew she was wrong, but for the sake of her beloved, she still stubbornly shouted, "You have money, why won't you give it to me? I'm also your daughter. Are you going to leave all the money to Giselle? Why?" Dad was so angry that he trembled all over and asked the most helpless question from the bottom of his heart. "Genevieve, what does our family owe you? Your mom and I raised you and your sister together. We've never shown favoritism. Do you have any conscience?" Tears streamed down Genevieve's face. "You're lying. You've always favored her. It's been like this since we were kids, even if you don't say it." "I know." Mom, who had been silent, finally trembled and pointed outside. "Get out, Mom." Genevieve looked at Mom in disbelief. Mom, who had always doted on her the most, would always be the first to comfort her whenever she was unhappy, but now she was telling her to get out. Genevieve couldn't believe it and immediately turned her anger on me. Is it you, Giselle? What lies did you tell Mom and Dad? You're so despicable. Mom and Dad aren't just yours. I looked at her with a dark expression. Mom and Dad had never shown favoritism. It was she who was obsessed with it and wrongly attributed it to them. I could overlook what happened in the previous life for Mom and Dad's sake, but now, why should I care what an ungrateful person thought? You're right. Under her shocked gaze, I dragged her to the door and threw her out. I said coldly, you're not Mom and Dad's daughter at all. You should have grown up in an orphanage and died alone. Mom and Dad shouldn't have given you extra love. With a bang, I closed the door tightly. Almost in her face, under her stunned gaze, soon, the sound of her kicking and cursing came from outside the door, but none of us paid any attention. Knowing something in our hearts was one thing, but emotional ties were another. Soon, only Mom's soft sobs could be heard in the living room. Dad also turned his head with red-rimmed eyes. For a while, we were all silent, silently accepting everything. Fortunately, the gloomy atmosphere didn't last long, and we quickly perked up. We had already found a place to stay during the apocalypse. These past few days, Dad and I had been leaving early and coming back late to check on the renovation progress. It was a relatively secluded villa area with a good terrain. It also had a cellar like our old hometown, so it wouldn't be difficult to get through the extremely hot weather, especially with my space. Yes, as soon as I came back, I went to the old house in the suburbs and took the bracelet, leaving only an ordinary substitute. Just like in the previous life, only I could open the bracelet that had recognized its master. I was originally worried about how to explain the apocalypse to Mom and Dad, but unexpectedly, they had also been reborn, so we decided to prepare supplies for the apocalypse when my sister wasn't paying attention. We didn't dare to buy things openly. Instead, we rented a warehouse in the name of me opening a supermarket. We went to various shops every day, under the pretext of testing new products. We only bought a small amount from each place to avoid attracting attention. At night, we secretly put everything into the space. Things put into the space would remain in their original state, and we hardly had to worry about them expiring or getting moldy. During this time, Mom also bought a lot of seeds. When we went to the warehouse at night, she would help plant some. In her words, although it might not be of much use, it was still something to look forward to, after solving the food problem. The next thing was accommodation. In the previous life, we encountered extremely hot weather when cleaning the old house. Fortunately, the cellar of the old house was a good place to take shelter, so the first thing that came to our mind was a house with a cellar. It was too late to renovate the old house. And besides, my sister already knew about it, so it wasn't safe to go there. For a while, we couldn't think of any other choice except a villa with a wine cellar. Mom and Dad gritted their teeth, sold the house, took out a loan, and with my careful selection, we finally settled on this place. After getting the house, we didn't slack off. We reinforced the doors, raised the protective nets, and strengthened the windows. In other words, we improved all the exposed parts. For electricity, we chose solar energy first. We didn't have to worry about running out of power in the early stage, and there were generators in the later stage. Overall, it was sufficient. Not only humans, but we wouldn't be afraid even if zombies came. Just as Mom, Dad, and I were about to start moving, my sister came back again. 5. Genevieve's arrogant nature finally bowed down in the face of money. Indeed, her beloved Everett pretended to be noble, but in reality, he was penniless. Genevieve needed to buy supplies, so she had no choice but to ask her parents for help. This time, Mom and Dad didn't soften their hearts. When they saw them arrive, they didn't even give them a glance. Genevieve had never been treated like this before, but under Everett's impatient gaze, she held back her anger and humbly said, Mom, Dad, I was really wrong last time. Don't be angry anymore. However, Mom and Dad had lost all hope in her. They were unmoved no matter what she said. Genevieve seemed to have expected the situation. As soon as she finished speaking, she dropped a bombshell. Mom, Dad, I'm going to marry Everett. What? Mom looked at the two of them with a hint of scrutiny. Are you serious? Seeing an opportunity, Genevieve quickly replied, Yes, actually, Everett and I have been together for a long time. After what happened last time, I decided that we'll move out after we get married. As she spoke, she pretended to wipe away tears. Obviously trying to gain Mom and Dad's sympathy by taking a step back, Everett didn't say a word throughout, but from his expression, it was clear that he wasn't happy about it. After all, in his eyes, Genevieve was just someone who fawned over him. If she hadn't spent money on him, he wouldn't have given her the time of day. If what Genevieve said was true and he didn't have to spend any money, he wouldn't have participated in this farce. Dad knew her intentions well and sneered. Get married if you want. We won't stop you even if you move your household registration out now. A glimmer of light flashed in Genevieve's eyes, but Everett's face darkened instantly. I smiled lightly. Sister, you seem very happy, but brother-in-law doesn't look too pleased. Genevieve glared at me, seeing that Everett's expression was unpleasant. She quickly changed the subject. Dad, Everett and I plan to have a wedding first and then get married, Mom said coldly. What? Here to ask for money again. Genevieve had been away from home for a long time. We hadn't contacted her, and she didn't receive a warm welcome when she came back. Her patience had run out, and she said impatiently, Mom, why do you always talk like that? I'm getting married. Don't you have anything to say? Are you just going to let me lose face? Besides, am I not your daughter? I'm getting married. Aren't you going to give me any dowry? In the end, she was still after the money. Mom looked at her disappointedly. Then tell us, what do you want us to do? Genevieve said confidently. Of course, you have to throw me a grand wedding. Forget about the $1,000,000 yuan, but you should at least give me 500,000 yuan as a dowry. Dad finally couldn't take it anymore. Who exactly are you going to marry? He pointed at Everett. If you want to marry him, ask him for these things. We don't have anything. Genevieve panicked. Everett has just started working. Where would he get so much money? Then where do we get so much money? Genevieve, have you lost all your conscience? Genevieve wasn't willing to back down. Why don't you have it? Don't think I don't know. You just want to secretly leave the money to Giselle. Hearing these words again, Dad pinched his forehead wearily. Just leave, marry whoever you want. After raising you for so many years, it seems we just weren't meant to be a family. Dad, enough, Everett, who had been listening silently, finally exploded. He realized that he wouldn't get any money this time, and his pride was hurt. He said coldly to Genevieve, since your parents looked down on me, that's it, I'm leaving. With that, he walked out without looking back, and the door slammed shut behind him. Seeing her beloved really leave, Genevieve could no longer control her emotions and completely broke down. She shouted, Mom and Dad, what on earth do you want? Is this how you treat me? Are you just going to watch and ruin my happiness? I'm still your daughter after all. Mom looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. We treat you as our daughter, but have you ever treated us as your parents? Genevieve's eyes dodged slightly, but she still justified loudly. Of course I have. You hid the fact that you had Giselle for me first. Isn't it reasonable for me to be angry? And Giselle is your biological daughter. Don't think I don't know you'll leave all the good things to her in the future. The more she spoke, the more she thought she was in the right. Look, I'm about to get married, but you won't even give me a decent wedding. What else is this if not favoritism? Seeing Mom's chest heaving violently, I said, well, we really can't afford that much money, but we can give you the old house in the suburbs. Genevieve's voice stopped abruptly, and she stared straight at me. Really, in the past, she definitely wouldn't have agreed, but the bracelet was hidden in the old house, and although the place was remote, the house was still worth a lot of money, which was better than getting nothing. She had tried to get the bracelet from the old house before, but the place was in a mess and uninhabited. Mom and Dad had also taken great care to prevent her from entering. She was afraid that the risks of forcing her way in would outweigh the benefits, so she hadn't succeeded yet. As soon as I said this, she was immediately tempted. Sometimes I really don't know whether to call Genevieve smart or stupid. After being reborn, she knew to hide her identity immediately and plan for money and supplies, but she never thought of hiding the bracelet in another place. Then give me the key to the old house now and take me to transfer the ownership tomorrow. We can give you the key first, but the condition is that you must move your household registration out, I said calmly. What? Genevieve immediately stood up and pointed at me, shouting angrily, I knew it was you behind all this. Do you want me to cut off all ties with this family completely? Mom and Dad, look, I told you Giselle has bad intentions. She was still yelling hysterically until Dad suddenly slammed his hand on the table. Then she realized that the reaction she expected didn't happen. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, filled with complex emotions she couldn't understand. Do as Giselle said. Dad made the final decision. Genevieve finally felt scared. She once thought that we had all been reborn, but she quickly comforted herself that if that were true, we couldn't be so calm. Perhaps the approaching apocalypse made her anxious, she said viciously. Fine, I'll move it. You'll regret it sooner or later. Dad obviously didn't want to see her anymore. With time running out, he managed to move Genevieve's household registration out before the end of the workday. Genevieve got the key as she wished and left without looking back to find Everett. The apocalypse was approaching, and whether the house was transferred or not didn't matter to her anymore. While she was busy selling supplies, the renovation of the villa was completed. Mom, Dad, and I didn't hesitate to prepare to move there. 6. When I say we moved, we didn't actually take many things, just some daily necessities and items with sentimental value. We didn't plan to leave openly. Most of the things in the house were left as they were to prevent Genevieve from getting suspicious if she suddenly came back. I also spread the news about the day Genevieve came back with Everett and made a scene throughout the neighborhood. Soon, Everyone knew that Genevieve insisted on marrying a poor guy and even asked for a dowry of 1 million yuan. Every time I appeared in the neighborhood, I would be stopped by gossipy aunts who would ask, "So did your parents give the money to your sister in the end?" I would sigh and say, "Alas, where would we get so much money? They wouldn't let it go. But I heard your sister still left with that guy." I would sigh again, "Yes. My parents didn't have that much money at once, so they had to give her the house in the suburbs first. Let's not talk about it, Auntie. After all, it's the old family house. My parents haven't been in a good mood these days, and I plan to take them out to relax. I have to go now. This way." If Genevieve suddenly came looking for us and couldn't find anyone, there was nothing to worry about. Mom, Dad, and I left the neighborhood justifiably and moved into the villa. Looking at the magnificent villa, our moods immediately improved. No wonder everyone wants to be rich. On the first day of moving in, Mom, Dad, and I cooked hot pot. Eating the steaming hot pot, we felt much less tired from the past few days. With food and a safe place to live, I believe we won't have a hard time surviving the apocalypse this time. After dinner, Mom was still in a gloomy mood. She touched the sofa and felt uneasy. "Giselle, this is the first time Mom has lived in such a nice house, but I just feel something is off. We were reborn and could prepare in advance, but what about those who didn't? I'm not a saint. I also learned my lesson from Genevieve in the previous life, but she still couldn't get over it. I comforted her. "It's okay, Mom. I know most people would think this way." I turned on the computer, entered a URL, and opened a hidden website. My avatar showed 4/21. There were still 17 days left until then. That was the day I died in my previous life, and my account would expire on that day, and I could no longer access this page. "What's this?" Mom asked me in confusion. I told her, "I found this by chance a few days after I was reborn. It's a place exclusively for reborn people. Our identities are absolutely hidden here, so there's no need to worry about any trouble." I posted the news about the apocalypse on it. "Don't worry, we may not be able to do much, but there are definitely people who will handle it." Only then did Mom feel reassured. No wonder I saw construction everywhere these days. I thought I just didn't notice it in my previous life. I patted her gently. "So don't worry, relax, and think about your hobbies so you can pass the time in the next few days. Don't worry about other things." The day before the extreme heat arrived, the temperature began to rise gradually. Fortunately, there was enough electricity, and the air conditioner worked well, so the heat wasn't too obvious these days. We weren't idle but were busy checking for anything missing or incomplete. Mom knew the benefits of the space and specially cooked a lot of food so that we could eat it directly when the apocalypse came, without having to worry about any trouble caused by cooking. After all, it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Just because the house is renovated doesn't mean everything is perfect. Genevieve finally discovered the secret of the bracelet, although she managed to get it. She couldn't activate the space no matter what. She thought it would only appear when the apocalypse arrived. However, as the apocalypse approached, she became uneasy and came to our door. Fortunately, I had the foresight to install surveillance cameras all over the house, which also served as a way to pass the time. Genevieve knocked on the door so loudly that the neighbors couldn't help but open their doors. "What are you doing? Don't you know there are other people here?" Genevieve had run out of patience and retorted, "So what? It's my home. What does it have to do with you?" The neighbor obviously disliked her and said directly, "You knock on the door to get into your own home. Don't think we don't know what kind of person you are, an ungrateful wretch. Stop pretending. You drove your parents away." Genevieve got anxious. "What do you mean? My parents aren't home. Where did they go?" The neighbor looked at her disdainfully. "You don't even know this. I really wonder if you're their real daughter." With that, in front of Genevieve, whose face turned red and then pale, the neighbor closed the door. However, Genevieve didn't care. If I wasn't there and she couldn't open the space, she would be in big trouble, so she stopped everyone in the neighborhood and asked them. Finally, she learned that I had taken Mom and Dad out to relax and wouldn't be back for a while. She couldn't believe it and called me several times, but none of the calls went through. Genevieve understood that we were extremely angry and wouldn't pay attention to her in the short term. She cursed at the phone viciously and had no choice but to hurry back to the old house. 7. As the ground temperature soared rapidly, it reached 40 degrees Celsius in just one day and continued to rise. Many people gradually noticed something was wrong. At this rate, it wasn't impossible for the temperature to exceed 50 degrees Celsius, which quickly caused panic among some people. Fortunately, when the country intervened in time, the underground shelters that had been under construction everywhere were opened to the public, providing shelter for those who couldn't survive in the extreme heat. Overall, as long as everyone worked together, they could get through the difficulties of the apocalypse. However, Genevieve, who was busy setting up the old house in the suburbs, obviously didn't hear the news and was still focused on taking care of Everett and his troublesome mother. The space was limited, so she had to store the food in the cellar. As the temperature rose, only the dry food seemed to have barely avoided spoilage. Food suddenly became scarce, and Everett's mother was very dissatisfied and scolded Genevieve every day. Although Genevieve was domineering at home, she was speechless in the face of such obstacles, but all these had nothing to do with me. I was living quite comfortably in the spacious villa, although we saw the notice, Mom, Dad, and I chose to stay in the villa, not to mention that this place was safe with few people after our renovation, and I didn't have to worry about my space being exposed, enjoying the cool air from the air conditioner and having an abundance of delicious food. I was extremely relaxed and happy before. While the network was still working properly, I downloaded thousands of novels and movies and TV shows, so boredom was no longer a problem. My parents were different from me. Instead of indulging in pleasure, they weren't used to the sudden leisure after working hard for half their lives. They would occasionally go into the space to farm, their moods relaxed, and smiles appeared on their faces more and more often. Of course, we weren't completely cut off from the outside world. Besides listening to the radio every day to get information, I would also exchange information with others when the network was restored occasionally. In my previous life, I only stayed in the apocalypse for a short time, but experiencing the endless heat this time, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Fortunately, our family was safely reunited this time. 3 months later, the temperature began to drop slowly. However, after a heavy rain, the temperature plummeted from over 60 degrees Celsius to minus 60 degrees Celsius. The extreme cold didn't come as gradually as the extreme heat. If the country hadn't issued a warning in advance, many people might not have survived that long night. After experiencing the extreme heat, we obviously couldn't adapt to the sudden extreme cold. We turned on the floor heating and electric stoves at the same time and barely managed to keep the room temperature within a bearable range. Suddenly, the computer issued a harsh alarm, and we remembered Genevieve. Checking the surveillance records, we found that they had returned to the neighborhood from the old house during the heavy rain. However, the neighborhood was empty, and they couldn't get in, so they had to force the door open. We could hardly recognize Genevieve. She had lost so much weight in 3 months that it was shocking. Everett and the others weren't much better. The 3 of them were thin, sallow, and covered in filth. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising. After all, the basement of the old house was just a simple earthen kiln. Although it could barely withstand the apocalypse, anyone would have a hard time staying in that small, dark place for 3 months. You said your house had food. Why is there nothing here? Everett's mother was still overbearing and used her last bit of strength to blame Genevieve. Naturally, we didn't leave any food behind. And when people entered the underground shelters, they tried their best to take all the supplies with them. It would undoubtedly be very difficult for them to find food even if they went out. Genevieve was miserable. She had done nothing at home and could occasionally lose her temper, but she was clearly overwhelmed when it came to taking responsibility. She looked at Everett for help, but Everett just wrapped himself tightly in a thick quilt and gave her a cold stare. "Didn't you say you would help me get through the apocalypse? Then do it." Helpless, Genevieve gritted her teeth, wrapped herself up, and went out to look for food. Even if she found food, she still had to endure the obstacles from Everett's mother. This time, Mom and Dad didn't react at all. They just said indifferently, "She brought it upon herself," and then ignored them. 8. Surprisingly, the extreme cold seemed much shorter than the extreme heat. After a heavy rain 2 months later, the apocalypse finally ended. Whether it was us or the others who came out from underground, we were all dazed when we saw the scene on the ground. There were no expected cheers. Everyone just hugged each other, feeling lucky to have survived, and silently wiped the tears from their eyes. This time, thanks to the existence of reborn people, the country managed to prevent a major disaster. But would we be so lucky next time anyway? The most urgent task now is post-disaster reconstruction. However, unexpectedly, Genevieve was still alive. When she was found, she stared blankly, hardly looking like a normal person. Everett wasn't in a much better condition. Behind them, a bloody corpse silently told how they had survived the apocalypse. It wasn't until she saw the dense crowd around her, all frowning and looking at her, that Genevieve finally showed some normal emotions and broke down, shouting, "Help me, hurry, take me away from here." It turned out that in the extremely cold weather, they couldn't find any food, and they couldn't survive due to the low temperature, so they crawled all the way to the basement of the neighborhood. When they left, most of the messy things in the neighborhood had been piled here. The thick pile of things had saved their lives in the extreme cold, but Everett's mother was old, and due to various problems with the climate and food, she lost her life as soon as she crawled into the basement, without food. It goes without saying what Genevieve and the others did to survive. As soon as she saw us, Genevieve almost cried and begged us to take her away. However, when she clearly saw that we were unharmed, she asked in confusion, "Why are you all okay?" Someone couldn't stand it and said coldly, "Before the extreme weather, the country had called on everyone to take shelter. I'm afraid only you were silly enough not to go." Upon hearing this, Genevieve instantly broke down. "No. It shouldn't be like this. It clearly wasn't like this in my previous life. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. You're all lying to me, right? Are you crazy? For a moment, everyone started whispering and talking. Only I whispered in her ear, of course it's because we've all been reborn. Genevieve immediately widened her eyes in horror and said in disbelief, then why did you still? I smiled at her and said, sister, sometimes living is more painful than dying, isn't it? Soon, the story of what happened to Genevieve in the basement spread like wildfire. What they did under extreme weather, though understandable, made people uncomfortable. What's more, there were clearly better options available to them. It's just unexpected that even though she had personally killed me, mom, and dad in the previous life, she could still talk to us without batting an eyelid. Before, she could slack off, relying on her parents to take care of everything, but now that she knew we were also reborn, she didn't dare to approach us and started to hide in fear, and her life was no different from when the apocalypse was ongoing. She and Everett eventually ended up together. No matter what, Everett's mother was his biological mother, and he blamed everything on Genevieve, even though they could only live under a bridge. Whenever Everett was in a bad mood, Genevieve would be severely beaten. My mother once wondered, we were so good to Genevieve, but Everett never treated her nicely. Why did she kill us for that man? However, blood ties are indeed a mysterious thing, and simple love can't easily change them. In Genevieve's view, since mom and dad adopted her, they shouldn't have had another child and should have poured all their love into her alone. It was precisely because she knew how much mom and dad loved her that she dared to vent her dissatisfaction confidently and use it to demonstrate against me. However, in fact, she was the only one who truly minded that mom and dad had another child. Anyway, a wrong is a wrong. As I said, sometimes living is more tormenting than dying, and she brought all this upon herself.